How do I do that? Okay. Okay. It's a, I'll call it a US keyboard.
Say it's an answer, yeah. All right, that seems to
Oh,
work.
that works. All right.
Clicker,
Cool.
clicker. Awesome. All right. Oh, the doors are being closed.
Oh, look at this. There's a USB-C on there.
Funky. Yes.
It's
All right.
time.
It is time. Please, those of you who have not already, scan that beautiful QR code. Hello. So those of you who have not done so already, please scan that beautiful QR code or do the other things that let the world know that you were here. We have welcome to the combined JMAP and extra session. So the plan is to spend around about 55 minutes on JMAP and 55 minutes on extra, a few minutes at the start while we figure things out and give you the note wall of text, and then we'll get into it. I have a click. So JMAP is the host of this, and extra is combined with us for half of it. It's a bit weird that it doesn't show up in extra's meeting list, but there you go.
Well, extra is extra.
The note well, as many of you have already seen. Hello, welcome. I'm sure everyone here has seen this one before. If you have not, please read through this. These are the conditions under which you will be giving your contributions here. And now the clicker doesn't work. Also, be good people, behave yourselves, treat people well. Thank you. Skip right through that slide. We know what we're doing. Here's our agenda. So we're going to be spending the first 60 minutes or so on JMAP, the remaining 55 minutes or so on extra, give or take. The timings for the individual items in there, I don't think really matter too much as long as we get through all the work that we have here. Any agenda bashing before we start? Anyone want to talk about anything else in this session?
Yeah, I want to do the extra first.
Do you just?
Well, is part of the agenda bash a discussion about MailMate?
That is in the extra section. I've set aside some time for it. We could always do that first.
It's an extra part of extra.
Yes, it is a middle part of the session. Fantastic. So to start off with, under JMAP, we have 3 documents with IESG: JMAP Civ, JMAP Sharing, and JMAP Contacts. I believe we have some slides for Civ, and for Sharing and Contacts, Neil was just going to hop up and speak. So we want to share the slides for Civ. I've got a clicker here if you need. Cool.
All right, this should be quick. Next slide, please. So this went through a full ISGR review. Actually, yesterday after I made this slide, I got my SEC review, which was mostly comments, nothing to be changed there. The other feedback did result in a lot of editorial changes. I'll run through those real quick to see if anybody has any issues with what changes were made. The big one, there was a statement either in the abstract or the introduction that said that JMAP Civ had different functionality from Managed Civ, which caused some confusion. So I removed that, and there's terminology elsewhere with relation to each method that it specifies that it has equivalent functionality to a particular Managed Civ function or multiple functions. Subsections in section 1 were merged together, which is pretty much editorial. I added an example JMAP session object. One of the reviewers was asking about that, and I was able to use that to reference it from other examples, which made things a little cleaner. The blob ID description talked about what the content was supposed to be, what it shouldn't be. I removed that out into its own section, which seems to be a little bit cleaner way to do things. Next slide, please. As per the other JMAP specs, I stripped all the examples down to just method calls and method responses, meaning all the using strings and everything else is stripped out just to make it a little lightweight. Per Neil's suggestion, two of the errors are renamed using the term sieve instead of script. And I added a section talking about quotas. It's fairly sparse, but basically says a server should impose them. How you administer them is outside the scope of this particular document, but it does say that the JMAP quota spec is one way that a client can fetch information about those particular quotas. Next slide, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, yeah, Joris had a comment about the examples. I listed them as a JMAP API request and response. He thought that was somewhat confusing and just wanted me to just use the terms method calls and method responses. If he has any strong feelings about that. Murray is at the mic, so maybe he does, or he has some other issues.
Just you said that this has been through ISG evaluation. It's not. It's it finished last call. It's sitting in the queue for. It's got a ballot open, but you're getting your director reviews in, so it's not as far along as you think it is.
All right, that's fine. Yep, my mistake. I'll take this issue to the list. Actually, this particular question was on the list. If anybody has any strong feelings about it, please let me know. I'm inclined to let things roll the way they currently are unless someone else chimes in and says that I need to make a change.
Yours and
Sorry, George, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings about this. It just looked like a mistake to me, so I raised it. But it's fine if you leave it, if it's on purpose.
Okay, thanks. Neil?
Sorry. I'll have to have a look at the spec, see where it was again, but JMAP API request with the capital R would be the object, including all those extra properties, because that's what that object's called. If it's just method calls, then that would just be the array of method calls.
Okay.
So whichever one of those it is, use the right.
All right, thanks. I think that's pretty much the last slide. Yeah, if someone wants to take another read, other than George, that is, wants to read through the updated text, I'd appreciate it. I don't believe I made any technical changes, but it's always good to have a second, third pair of eyes. That is it. Thanks.
All right, so I don't think we need another working group last call for it. It doesn't sound like there's substantial technical changes there. I mean, our area director's right here. If he doesn't think that we need another working group last call, that was a nope, then we'll just let it keep going with your changes.
Mostly pushing text around.
So rest mapping next?
So next one is sharing and contacts.
Okay, this one should also be super quick.
There's no
There's no slides for this because there's not much to say. Murray has done AD review of these two. Thank you. Some good small comments. I published a sharing update this morning that addresses those nits, and I will publish an update to contacts for those ones today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But there's no substantial changes, so I don't think, again, anything needs to go for a particular review, and I'm hoping that we can progress those on to the next stage once that's published. As I said, sharing one's already done, contacts very soon. There's no blockers or any other like people raising issues on those that I'm aware of. Anyone got any comments on those? Otherwise, I think, yeah, they're just ready to move on.
All right, thanks. Anyone, any comments on either
Contacts
JMAP
or
sharing
sharing,
or contacts? Yeah.
No,
That was quick, thank
great.
you.
Yeah, I said it would be quick. Okay, so calendars is the one we've had a bit more discussion on the list recently. And I think we've got a proposed way forward with this. So I have got slides, although they don't show much, but you can, are we doing
Have
calendars now?
they been uploaded?
So or am I jumping ahead? Is that the next?
Yep, calendars is next in
Yeah.
the agenda.
I don't
It's in
see
working
the
group last call. Did
slides,
you email them or did you upload them?
Oh, I emailed them to you, sorry.
All right.
I should have uploaded them.
Yeah,
That was,
I'll have to pop them
it's,
in the queue
okay.
then.
All right, so I think the issue that was raised here was about conversion to iCalendar, which was kind of required for the dependency on ITIP. And I think what we realized when we looked at it again is that we shouldn't tie it quite so closely to ITIP. Whilst that is the most common scheduling mechanism people will be using for sending events, at least between different providers at the moment. It shouldn't be this is locked in and you must now support this forever, because it mandates a bunch of things like you have to now also support iCalendar forever, even if you didn't need that for the rest of your JMAP server. So the plan is to make a pretty small change, which just removes the subsection that describes what ITIP messages to send. We would publish that probably later as an informational thing, because it's useful if you are implementing ITIP, but it's not essential. And then I think that removes that dependency. And the other change we're going to make is to rename, we introduced this new property called Schedule ID to make it easier to map participants or attendees from iCalendar. And we're going to rename that to Calendar User Address, which is just very explicit about what that is, because it's for start, it's not actually an ID type, it's a URI. So having ID in the name is a bit confusing when normally when we say that in JMAP, it means it's an ID type. And secondly, that's what it's called in iCalendar, and because we want people to map these very directly, if they are converting between the two, we thought it would be better to be explicit. So yeah, so this slide's just basically what I've been saying. Those are the two things that we plan to do, and I think between those two, that then removes that concern that had been raised about this dependency on ITIP and dependency on being able to convert to iCalendar. So we'll be able to publish JMAP calendars, and then later on we'll have a recommended way of converting iCalendar to JS Calendar, which Robert and a few other people are working on. And we can publish the way you would then send ITIP messages from JMAP calendars with that as well. But I don't think it's not going to conflict with this work. It makes them nicely independent then. So that's my plan. So again, I'll publish an updated draft for that spec probably today or tomorrow. And then I don't know what the next step with that would be, whether it would need another working group last call or whether we can keep it where I'm not sure what the status of that is at the moment. Actually, what's the draft status of calendars, JMAP calendars?
So it's in working group last call.
Okay, so we'd probably just refresh the working group last call
we'll
then.
Refresh it and say, please review.
And then hopefully that's hopefully that's then done, and we can tick that one off too, and we'll have a lot of specs progressing towards a final destination. Any questions or comments on calendars? Joris.
Whoop. No? Okay. Am I still quite loud?
Yeah, quite loud.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I can lower the volume on my microphone. Okay. So yeah, just wanted to say it sounds like the main issue has been resolved and it can go through. I would agree. That's it. No further comment.
Great, thank you. Good to see. Yeah, someone else thinks that too. All right. Yeah, I think that's it on those. They're all so close to being done. I really hope we can get them over the line before the next meeting and they won't appear on the agenda again. Woo. Or maybe not. Mari's got something to say.
Just a quick thing. I sent, not the contracts draft, the other one is set for last call now. The one you have updated.
JMAP sharing, I think the one I did this morning.
Sharing's gone for last call.
Gone for last call to ITF. Perfect. Great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I've got actions here. Neil will update drafts and continue with sharing and contacts. And for calendars, Neil will update draft and Bron will refresh work group last call for another 2 weeks before we submit that to ASG. Yep. Existing drafts, REST, portability extensions, and portability guide. So, yeah, REST is next.
Yeah. All right. All right. I think I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, first I want to start with an intervention, explaining again why we have all those 3 portability specs. So basically, the main idea is we want to have a protocol and some, yeah, basically a protocol about moving for moving existing user data between systems over a generic API. We want to be able to give an API spec to users or developers of legacy systems which have no appropriate API. And as an example, we want people to migrate away from Auto Webmailer. It's just one example I came up with. So we would then present 3 documents. One first is the portability guide, which shows or showcases a bare minimum of JMAP, even for such use cases, which we call a one-time migration. So you only migrate once and then you don't use the API anymore. So it has to be a very low entry barrier to implement JMAP. Then we have the REST mapping spec to have even lower barriers, because for some people, even those barriers might be too low, which introduces a simplified request scheme. And then we also have some further extensions that can be useful to migration specific problems. Next slide, please. Yeah. So here is the REST mapping spec, which is basically the second of the whole bunch. Yeah, the big change it has is that it has been adopted now by the working group so no further changes until then. Yeah, so this is what it looks right now. So basically the main idea is there is a new API URL REST property in the session object, and it is just like the download URL in the session object or the upload URL. You can define, but with the difference that you define things like method call and properties that are typically in the JSON request. You define them in the URL. And yeah, as it is right now, each call is then a post call to this endpoint that is defined. Yeah, and yeah, I'm not quite happy with the way it is. Other people also were not very happy. So yeah, I think we should, or I think it makes sense to talk about what we do with that, or how we progress here. Next slide, please. So so the main idea for the REST mapping spec, because it has also been raised, I think, by Robert, like it's not clear from the spec what the main purpose of the spec is. That should definitely be in the spec. Here I tried to nail it down. So the main idea is to impose lower requirements. So we didn't want to have any JSON in the request. One idea was also to avoid routing in general, like avoid having paths in the URI. Next slide, please. So Neil, when he did a review, he looked at the, he had a different suggestion than he said, basically use this type of API REST URL and actually map each JMAP method call to a REST method. Next slide, please. I would say this is fine, basically. But yeah, obviously, this would then, or this may then allow to have no JSON in the request. But yeah, we would need to drop the routing requirement as it is right now. It is possible to define a API REST URL more or less without having a routing, without needing to have a routing library. But yeah, I think this is fine to drop this requirement for me at least. So we only would have the first requirement, and yeah, just do simple CRUD tests, CRUD methods. Oh, can you please go back to the slide?
Sorry.
Yeah. So one question that I would have is it fine to actually only implement the CRUD methods. For me, this would not include query. Would be nice to leave that out for our requirements at least, to not have a quite complicated mapping spec. But yeah, I think that would need to be discussed if that's fine for the working group.
Neil is at the mic.
Yeah, I think you can leave out query, except you need some way to be able to get all of the objects given the purpose of this. So maybe if you like get without an ID on the end of the URL, so like get/API/account1/calendar, you get a page back with some token to be able to get the next page or something. That's how this kind of API would normally function. And then in the future, you could extend it to add filters, but I don't think you need to. Like the point of this is not to try and replicate everything you can do in JMAP, because at that point, you've just got a clunkier syntax for JMAP. Like it's to be able to do exactly. JMAP is designed to be as clean as possible, given all the things it wants to be able to do. So here you want to say, if you only want to do these really simple things, we can define this simple API that people expect and like do it like that, and then just drop everything else. That would be, my recommendation.
All right, that is really nice to hear. I was when I drafted the spec, I was mainly a bit unsure what the working group expects from the spec here, but that makes it very clear. All right, if there are no further comments, I would move to the next slide. All right, URI templates came up twice now, and I also saw Neil using them in his draft review. So this on the first line is basically what is defined right now. I tried to stick heavily to what's defined in JMAP core already for download URL and upload URL. But yeah, we could move to using URI templates. One concern of me was that people might then want to use all the features that URI template would give them. And yeah, maybe people already have opinions on that. Yeah, I think they do.
Hello, I'm back again. The JMAP core spec uses URI templates as well, and it explicitly says URI templates level 1 only. The URI template spec has different levels of complexity, and so it says you can use anything in level 1, which is very simple, just placeholders, as I recall. I'd have to double check. So there's an audio solution for that, which we use in core.
Okay, nice. Then I overlooked that. Thanks. All right, then that was quite helpful. And I'm done with that, with those slides.
Okay.
All right. I've noted down here, I think the thing says action for Joris for you to publish a version 1, combining this feedback, and then discuss again on the list.
Yes.
What's the next one?
Portability extensions.
They're mostly in order, just checking.
Yes. So this is well, sorry, it's a bit early in the morning. So yeah, the draft on migration and portability extensions. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so there have been a bunch of changes during the call for adoption, actually. So before this was adopted, or last IETF, these were 2 specs still, JMAP debug logging and JMAP backend info. Those have been merged into portability extensions. Each of those specs has a different JMAP capability. JMAP debug logging is for exposing backend logs directly to JMAP clients. And the JMAP backend info is for identifying the server and software version. And as it is right now, it has been adopted. Next slide, please. So yeah, since it has been adopted, nothing has happened. It still needs definitely needs some work here and there. So for debug logs, for me, my point of view, we need to have still some logs, even though the server prints out an error response. And for backend info, one thing that's obvious to me is to gain more implementation experience and refine as it is defined right now. It's not the final version, definitely. And likely there will be also more changes needed. If there are any comments, feel free to go to the mic, but if not, I would just continue with the next spec.
So I think we probably should try and get some implementation experience with it. Do we want to do that in our server, Ken? Yeah, I think it's worth doing it and checking that it makes sense as an implementer. All right, so we'll do that. Someone at Fastmail implement in Cyrus and see what it looks like. Cool.
All right, and here is my last slide deck about the guide for migration and blood portability. Next slide, please. So since it has been adopted, not much has changed, but it has been adopted now. Next slide, please. So here again, why did we do this? Because we want to have a version of JMAP that, or we want to have, no, it's not a different version. We would just want to show how to implement JMAP just to have a bare minimum. And as it turns out, this is not only interesting for the migration or portability scenario, it's also interesting for other server and client developers. For example, after FOSDEM, I got some feedback regarding this spec, and it was told to me that it's surprising to see when reading the spec how little is actually required to have a minimum version. And that's also one of the big ideas here, to help bootstrap JMAP on different systems, because it was our impression that the spec looked quite big and complex at first sight, and the idea here is also to help and guide people and maybe prioritize implementing certain things. And as a side note, I was also reference to the current implementation guide on JMAP.io. It's out, at least it says on the page that it's outdated. Might make sense to, I think they somehow belong together, the guide we have here and also the implementation guide on JMAP.io. It might make sense to update that also at some point or in conjunction. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So regarding future work, I think this spec has seen a bunch of versions already. I think 2 or something. So I'm not sure what's needed here. And if somebody has some ideas on what the spec still needs, maybe you could come up to the microphone, or I mean, I think internally we need to have another round and discuss if we are very happy with the spec as it is, but I don't see obvious points that still need to be addressed. So if there are any, just come to the mic or maybe leave feedback on the list. And that would be it.
And the microphone is still lonely, so I guess not.
All right.
I guess the next question is, have people read this since it was? All right. So I think probably what we need to say here is action to people in this room. Read the document. Give feedback, please, on the list. So this is JMAP Portability Guide.
Yes.
Yeah.
So speaking as an individual, I'm wondering if portability, I think I misunderstood the purpose of this document as portability guide. If is it maybe an implementation guide or something like that, it makes it sound as though you've got something JMAP in one place and you're moving it someplace else. Whereas I think what you're really doing is the way you're describing it here is, and I apologize, I haven't read the draft. Is that you're trying to make it easier for people to deploy.
Yes. Thank you. I was yeah. I thought that this point might come up. Yeah. So I was also thinking if the naming is still good, because yeah, or if it's what the working group also wants, maybe this. I mean, for our use case is clearly more in the migration and portability direction, but it can also be useful for other people. So that's not obvious from just reading the title of the document. I think that's what you're referring to, right? Yeah.
Right. Yes. I mean, I'm working on doing some deployment, and I didn't think to look at this document. So.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, definitely good point, Jim. Maybe if I'm ready on the mic, here's Jörg, first of all, hi. Maybe giving some history on that. So I think that was our starting point initially, because, there is this classic distinction we do between portability and interoperability, full-fledged interoperability, where you want to use all the client features because you do a continuous interaction with the server. Whereas in a portability scenario, you do basically a one-off import-export, which is our historic main use case. And for that, of course, we needed to find a subset because we don't need, certain whatever update features and this kind of stuff. So this is how that gets started, right? And obviously, on the way it turned out, it might even be interesting also for some, low-level interoperability scenarios. So you absolutely have a point that this might be a clarification to rephrase it a little bit or something like that. Yeah.
Hi, it's Neil again. I'll reread where this has got to, just have a look. But I just wanted to make the point that I think it's really important that it's the bare minimum means it still would work with a client that just has been designed to work for JMAP. So it is still JMAP. It's just it would be horrendously inefficient if you're doing anything other than like very basic stuff. That's kind of the goal, right? Just want to confirm that. So as a client, if I was connecting to one of these servers, everything, it would still work because it's all following all the stuff that JMAP, the JMAP spec. It is a valid implementation. It just happens to be a very inefficient one because you've cut some corners to make it much easier to implement. That's the idea.
Yeah, basically. So I actually have 3 different flavors, more or less. Like the smallest one, the bare minimum in that spec is actually not supporting anything. And then you can choose, do you want to support creating, or do you want to support reading? And if you implement all the 3 things, then
I guess the danger,
it's what you said basically.
The danger is you come up with something that people can say, we support JMAP, and then you try and actually use it and it just kind of doesn't work, and you have this problem then of what does it mean to have like JMAP support? It's just my concern, because we saw that a bit with IMAP, where people can say, oh, we support IMAP, great, but if you just support like 3501 and nothing else, it's probably barely usable.
Does it make sense to rename this as JMAP minimum profile or something like that, rather than JMAP portability guide, just in terms of branding?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Cool. I think that it's easy enough just to upload a document with that as the name that replaces the current one, and we can consider it still be the same adopted document. We've just renamed it.
Or just change the title and leave the document name the
Could
same.
leave the file name.
It kind of disappears after it turns into an RFC.
Yep.
Yeah. So last point maybe regarding what Neil said is it would be important for us to also distinguish between only reading and only writing, because those are just common use cases that we see in the migration or portability realm. But yeah, that's like if for a normal JMAP server, that would be kind of weird to only support one, I would say. But yeah,
The read-only account makes perfect sense. I can imagine a read-only profile being something you would offer to quite a lot of people if you don't want to store any data on the server about someone.
all right. Yeah. Okay, I will make that more clear in the spec then, regarding those 3 flavors. All right.
So next session, next topic is.
So next thing on the agenda here is SMIME sender, Alexei.
I just realized that you gave me 5 minutes, but that probably takes longer than 5 minutes.
It's fine. We're well ahead of time.
Oh, okay, perfect. I can use all the time. All right, moving on. So what happened is the working group document is 04. It actually expired. Last IETF, I was working on personal draft, which is an alternative approach. And I'm revising the alternative approach draft. I think suggestion is if people are happy with alternative approach, then kind of re-adopt it and make it the 05 of the working group. I'm not sure. I think chairs can decide what the best process for this. But I think the working group still needs to make a decision whether we stick with the original simple approach or the alternative. And there are some slides explaining that. Okay. Next slide, please. So the original approach is just having on email set have 2 main Boolean attributes for signing and encryption and a couple of supporting ones. And that it's very simple, but it's not extensible. So it only allows signing and encryption of both. If people want things like triple wrap, which is sign, encrypt, sign, then it's not possible to express this. Yeah. Next slide, please. So the other thing that was is there is a way in email query command to basically say, find me all messages which are encrypted or not encrypted or signed, not signed. Okay, next slide, please. So this is what happened to the alternative proposal where I'll firstly describe quickly some changes which apply to both documents really, but will only apply to my personal version. While trying to explain what is is this message signed or encrypted, there is, I was going through various media types and parameters, and then I realized there is actually a document in LAMPS that just got approved that describe terminology for this sort of thing. So instead of hacking it, I thought I'll just reference the other document. So then instead of having 2, 3, 4 Booleans, there is an array of objects that describes each operation that will be applied with the signing encryption. There is now a better way of doing the LAMPS header protection, which can say, well, don't strip this headers field on outside, but they will be an encrypted payload. So you want to hide it from external observers, or also list header fields that are being sanitized and changed on outside. And then after some background discussion with Neil and Philip, yeah, I added email SMIME decrypt, and there will be a bit some information. Next slide. Next slide. Right. So email SMIME decrypt. It basically takes a blob ID from, which is one of the body part blobs of the message you're trying to decrypt, and it produces a new blob. And if there is nothing to decrypt, it just returns the original. So I did this based on blob spec, actually. I was trying to find the closest one so that I don't have to deviate. And then I realized that actually email as MIME decrypt probably is not a great name. It probably better be blob as MIME decrypt because it translates a blob to another blob, which might or might not be a message actually. And then you invoke email parse on the blob, on decrypted blob. So yeah, I'll probably rename it if that's okay with you. Next slide. So yeah, these are the main kind of differences how this will. Sorry, that's probably not very obvious example, but so email set on the left hand side is the original approach with just Boolean. On the right hand side, it has the same account and ID and create and all the other parameters, but it has this array of operations being applied. And operations, you know, there are main operations that like sign and encrypt, and they also can have parameters specific to them. So you can, like, if you want to say, I want to encrypt using specific cipher, you can specify it. If you omit it, server picks. Yeah, go on.
I guess, looking at this, my question is, how many reasonable different combinations are there? Because the right-hand side is obviously more flexible, but it's also giving you lots more opportunities to fuck up. Whereas the left-hand side is like, maybe it does sign, encrypt, sign if you do both, set those both to true, for example, because the server's like, that's the best way to do this. I don't know enough about it, but I'm just, I like that it's a lot harder probably as a client to make a mistake with what's on the left.
Yeah, that was kind of like why I create alternative version, because I'm not sure. The right-hand side allows you, so obviously it allows support triple wrap. If we care about triple wrap, we can just add it on the left-hand side as another option.
Or even just say if you do both. Is there a reason you would not want to do that?
Yeah, you can do just sign and encrypt. It doesn't have to be triple wrap. It's actually, they're technically different. I know.
It's like, which ones should you be doing that? Like, if we can.
I suppose the one on the right, I'm being devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'm quite neutral about it. You can do things in SMIME like compress. If you want to add, you can just extend the structure on the right and add a new operation for compression. And you don't have to, change as much. How likely it is? No idea. So yeah, I'm a bit ambivalent. The right-hand side, it's quite beautiful and flexible, and you can generate all test cases from this, but it might be slightly over-engineered. So I don't know. I think the working group needs to pick. So I don't know what's the, do we need to have a poll in the working group? Philip is the one who wanted this.
Yeah. The nice thing, the one on the right, is that meant to be an argument to email set, or was that meant to be a property on the? Okay, because you could actually make that a property on the email object, which in some ways is nice because firstly it means you can specify something different for the different emails if you're doing multiple in a single request. If we're being flexible here, but the other thing is presumably then you could fetch it and it would come back to you. Well,
or you can't.
Well, no, it'd have to be decrypted first to fetch it.
The construction and reverse engineers how it was constructed. It's not quite.
Quite
symmetrical.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. I was just hopeful, but no.
Okay.
Robert Stepanek, Fastmail. I might have missed, but is there any order implied in the SMIME operations array?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So the
left-hand side will always say that if you have both a SMIME sign and SMIME encrypt true, then signing first, encrypt second. Okay. If you want to construct the opposite way, which is not, as far as I know, is being used, but possible, then there is no way of expressing this.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
I mean, I think I'll leave it in capable hands of chairs, try to figure out a way of how we decide on this. Doesn't have to, we probably cannot do this in the room. But you need to help me out.
I lean towards what Neil was saying, that we should define the best way and do it. The one tricky thing there is who do you encrypt it to? just SMIME encrypt doesn't cover the which keys
You
do you
encrypt
encrypt
the
it to.
recipients. It actually does. Well, it says you cannot add extra recipient. Well,
Yeah.
if we want extra recipients, the way on the right will give you ability to stick extra attributes.
So BCC recipients are not supported with this, or how does that work?
That's a very good point. No, it's not at the moment.
Mhm.
Well,
How do you encrypt for a BCC recipient without revealing who the BCC recipient is, right?
well,
Yeah.
there is a spec for this in LAMPS that just got approved.
Okay.
It does propose that you don't include BCC header field, and yeah, you might send different copies to different recipients. And I think conceptually, actually, BCC might work. I think if BCC is included in the message create, but it will have to be stripped from the message and just keys inserted for the specific recipients and separate copies generated.
But this is Barry. All the systems I'm aware of these days send separate messages for BCCs anyway, so that's moot.
I don't think that's true. Okay. Well.
Can't prove them wrong on that one.
Yeah.
Ken Murchison, Fastmail. I agree with Neil that the structure on the right might give clients too much rope. But on the flip side, if the best current practice of what SMIME recommends changes, the right-hand side is kind of future-proof in that regard.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly, like, I mean, the one on the right can give you a lot of nonsensible examples, like you can have sign and sign. You still can generate it in the real world. I don't know what clients will actually do with it once they receive. They might just handle it automatically or not. I have no idea.
I mean, when I think about it, actually, if you go in the left side, what you really want is a single option saying, SMIME this message, and then the server should do the right thing. Like, that's, yeah, like if you're doing
actually,
that, just...
okay, maybe what we want is a single thing, which is an enum, which gives you a, well, there is no do the right thing because sometimes you need signing, sometimes you need encryption or both. Well, you either need signing or signing and encryption.
Yeah.
But there are cases when you don't want encryption or can't have it. So
yeah, okay, yeah.
I think enum for the left, on the left-hand side will work. That's actually we implemented this. Yeah.
Robert Stepanek again. Did you also look into making the SMIME operations property object value so that you would have a key sign that points to an object that might include options?
Yeah, they are objects, yes.
No, but I mean, at the moment, it's an array of objects.
Yes.
So you would get to this nonsensical thing like sign 3 times and whatnot. Whereas if you would make it an object, SMIME operations for the key.
You might want still twice. That's the thing, it's more flexible, but you can generate. I mean,
but then I don't understand, like the left-hand side, then the abbreviated version seems like to imply all this just.
Yes, the left-hand side is limits the variants that you can produce. Okay. I mean, I think Philip also mentioned, I don't think it's the main driver, but with the right-hand side, you can create nonsensical options for testing if you want to see how the system behaves. So I don't know, help me choose.
So, speaking as an individual, I can think of situations, the sign and sign thing kind of brought something to mind that, I can think of situations where you might want more than one signature on a message, one representing maybe the individual and organization or something like that. How does that work here? I'm not sure that you necessarily want to have nested signatures. You'd like to have several independent signatures on the body, I think. Or on the blob that you're signing.
I think the way how it works with SMIME, you generate random key, you encrypt payload with random key, and then you include for each recipient, you include for this key decryption, way to decrypt it. So
now,
you list all the recipients.
now I was referring to signatures more than encryption.
Uh, uh,
I mean, maybe it's
At one level-
sign and you have multiple signing keys associated with it. And it's
I think it's all kind of, dictated by SMIME. I'm not sure. There are also in SMIME, technically, there are co-signatures. So, but they are typically invoked when you do extra processing and want to add, I verified this, I add co-signature. So it's another field in sign structure. At the moment, there is no way of doing this, but you can.
in any case, I think that sort of argues for the more flexible approach.
Okay. So you're saying if we want this, we want the right-hand side one.
That would be my vote. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But we need to take this to the list, no doubt.
Yeah.
And we need to sort it out amongst the chairs, because my vote is very much the opposite. I think we should, having read the LAMPS documents, I've been the art reviewer for both of the LAMPS documents related to this. They define a best practice. We were debating in LAMPS just yesterday whether we do BCP or informational, and I argued that there should be informational documents because we don't have real world experience. But the idea here is that your JMAP server does the right thing. And that's generally what we do with JMAP email creation. Is the JMAP server does the best current thing to create the email that goes out. And so what I would probably add is an SMIME profile or something, which would include the opaque headers in there as well. So if rather than having the specific, you say that these headers are going to be obscured and these headers are going to be removed from the outer object, you would name the profile. And the LAMPS documents, I can't remember what they called it, but it was an enum profile. And so you would say default.
It's basically you are saying HCP.
Yeah. So you'd name the HCP.
The thing is, okay, so in this case, what I've done, it's actually the decision is made on the client. The server doesn't need to know about HCPs, because if the client gets updated, it can still use this existing server.
Yeah, I would have the server give in the accounts object, it would say, here's the HCPs that I support, here's the recommended one, or the default one. And then if you don't provide one, it uses the default. If you do provide one of the other ones it supports, you use that. Okay. And have the client do very minimal, just pick from the choices the server offers or use the server's default. And you configure your server to do the thing that you want.
Personally, not entirely convinced that this particular part should be on the server side, but we can discuss on the mailing list. It just, I suppose it depends whether, how quickly you can revise the client side, the server side, if you want to try a new HCP, it's kind of more almost operational issue. Okay, next slide. Is there anything? I think there might be one. Okay, that we kind of talked about it. It's like flexible and extensible versus simple. Well, I think so my personal draft has some of the improvements which should be applied to both. But I think once we make a decision which approach we want on how we express signing and encryption options, I think then I can either, merge it to the other one or just repost the existing one. So I think chairs should talk between themselves the best approach, and then we can follow up. I can follow up with you.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think either way, we should consider this to be one different variants of one document, and whatever the working group agrees upon should be just rolled into the working group document. I don't think we need to do another call for adoption or anything.
Okay.
I'm not going to die on this hill. If the working group prefers to do the more complex thing, fine.
I'm just trying to be as flexible.
Yeah.
About this, and I'm sure chairs will do the right thing. Okay, I think I'm done with this one. There are nothing else right after that.
That's it.
Okay.
Final item we have here is JMAP tasks. I don't know if we had anything to do on that, or if it was, I know not much has been done since last IETF. Was there a slide deck for that or not? I think probably not. Yep.
Yeah. I just didn't come around to work on it. So still in the status last time. So that's also why I didn't prepare any slides.
Do you
Not
need
much
anything from the
to say.
working group to make progress on this?
I would say not really. It's yeah, I, it's nice to see calendars is progressing. So I just basically need to catch up, I would say, and work on it.
All right, so I guess we await the next draft.
Yep.
And with that, we are up to any other business. Does anyone have any other business for JMAP? There was a heckle that I didn't quite hear, but that's probably good. I'm just minuting Barry heckled. All right.
Transcribed it as Gemma.
Hey, hey. It's amazing, isn't it? All right. We are up to, if I can figure out how to share my screen, milestone review.
Boring.
Sorry.
More heckling.
So, where's the screen share button on this thing these days? It's that one, share screen. Accept. Whee. Here we are. Submit JMAP calendars document to ISG. That is going to happen shortly, right? Yeah. Let's say April. Sweet. Submit Civ document is done. Submit JMAP sharing document. Well, it's related. I think it got replaced by, but that one. There we go. Remove the other one. Why not? JMAP sharing is done.
Lost the resolve chat.
Did I? Far out. Thank you. Adopt a draft for basic migration simplified is done. Submit contact document is done. Server info and debug is done. REST mapping is done. JMAP archive format. This was not done. And we don't have a specific document on this. Is this still we want to do? When by? May. Fantastic. Maybe. All right. Should, I think, is where we're going to. Maybe must. Submit SMIME sender extensions document. That's definitely been kicked down the road a bit. Alexi, when do you think will be? Right. We'll discuss it in the list. We'll do it in July.
If we can make decision between two choices, after that, I don't think there is much work left.
All right.
If it helps.
I'll say May. We'll get everything done in May. Final one here was submit JMAP tasks document. Obviously, that has been delayed. When do we think we'll get that one done by?
Let's also say May or June.
May or June?
May.
Let's say May. Why not? We'll say everything
Yeah.
in May. All right. Were there any additional milestones we've come up with from today? There's no new documents that have been added. Do we need to put any submit any of these existing REST or server info and debug documents through to ISG? Do we want to add
is there anything
milestones for that?
portability or whatever it's going to be called document?
So they were in the adopted document for server info and debug adopts. There were a couple of them. Yeah. But we don't have submit them yet. Yes, Ken.
This is Ken again. Reminding folks that the JMAP Civ draft used to have a test method in it, and we split that out to simplify things. Is that a work item that the group is still interested in? Or are we just going to shelve that for a later time or eternity, or where do we stand?
Anyone? All right. I don't see tons of people wanting this at the moment. Oh.
So I did split it out into a separate draft based with the existing text. The biggest open question was there enough parameters in the request to handle all the various extensions that somebody might want to test? So I'll clean up what I have. I'll post it as individual and let people read it. And if there's strong opinions to want to bring it here, we'll call for it.
Cool. All right. Let's create some milestones for our existing documents, which are portability extensions, portability guide, REST, web push rapid. We missed that, Neil. Somehow that didn't make it into the copy of the agenda that was on there. But would you want to speak to web push rapid quickly? Don't see Daniel in the list.
Okay. Well, yes, not my draft, but I'm very much in support of this. It's a super simple document, and it's needed if you want to actually use the push with any web browser or other thing that implements RC8030 at the moment. They all require Vapid these days. So we should progress this to last call. I think it looks good. There's not much to it. Yeah.
All right. Jim, do you want to take this one? Do a working group last call on it?
Sure.
Congratulations. Thank you.
This was what, web push mapping?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is that actually working document this one?
It is, yeah.
Publish a new draft, so wait for you to publish that.
Excellent. Glad we didn't miss that. So let's add that to our milestones. And we're going to do that one in April by the time we've work group last called it. All right, Joris, web REST mapping, when do you think we'll submit that?
Maybe, I don't know, May or June.
Right,
okay, maybe move that further. We could also move it
June
further
for the
back.
submit. We can't do everything in.
Yeah.
I guess
I
in
mean,
terms of ordering, what ordering do you think we'll do them in out of the three?
I mean, I would say the portability guide is the first, and yeah, the other two are more or less similar. They both look like they need quite some work.
All right, so I'll give them August.
Yeah, let's do it like that.
That's till after the next IETF. That's right. portability guide to ISG. We'll say that one's going to happen in June. Portability extensions. Profile to ISG. August.
No, actually, the minimal profile is the portability guide.
Oh yeah, and this one's portability extensions. And so which order was that going to be in?
No, sorry, I meant the guide is likely ready first.
Yep.
Yeah.
So say extensions for August and guide
Yes. Yes.
for June. Yep. Sweet.
Perfect.
All right. And that, I think, is all our active documents. SIVs, ISG, JMAP calendars is work group last call, but we've already dealt with that. Sweet. That is all the milestones. Review changes. All right, done. That is JMAP completed. If we could go back to the chair slides. Welcome to Extra at IETF 119. Please note the note, well, all that. No, we're staying in the same session. So let's fast forward through to around about, wait, don't go too far yet. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Friends of Email Dinner tonight at the Boundary Restaurant. Did you want to speak at all about it, Arndt?
Share slides. I reserved for 11.
Yeah.
Not that they can come, but they ought to know. Yeah. I reserved for 11. If it turns out that 12 of us appear, then so be it. I'm sure they'll cook. They have more beer.
Mm-hmm. All right. I guess, shall we meet here and walk up there at 6:45 or so?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Let's meet at reception and walk up there, or feel free to make your own way.
Reception, you mean the registration
IETF
desk?
Registration, yes. IETF registration desk. Out here in the area directly outside this room. Those of you who are remote, feel free to wish you were here. 6:45, give or take a minute.
No, 6:45.
On the dot. All right. Excellent. Now, I think, was there anything that was...
Do we have a show of hands? Do you want to do a show of hands? How many people?
Sure. Are you coming? Awesome.
2, maybe.
2, 4, 6.
There'll be 12 of us, right?
Yeah, near enough. Excellent. Thanks, Arndt, for organizing this. Thanks, ICANN, for sponsoring this. Woohoo. All right. Extra. So this is the agenda that we have so far for Extra. Again, any agenda bashing here?
Can I just ask a quick question of the room, unrelated to any agenda item, but there's some work that's been brought to us that someone would like to have processed. It is referenced by the quota extension that this working group did not too long ago, as expressions in particular, but there's no RFC to reference for as expressions. Would it be better for any future work for you to have one? If there is, then I'll figure out how to sponsor it. It's in the quota that, yeah, there isn't a spec about S expressions. Would it be helpful for you to have one? That's my question. S expressions.
I remember those.
Okay. they're using quota.
They are, yes, that's true.
So not a priority is what I'm
I
hearing.
guess not.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
nobody's jumping up and saying, yes, that would make my life way easier.
That wasn't me saying you should take this up. This is just would be helpful.
All right. Shall we dive into it then? Art is standing up to speak about IMAP and JMAP access, which is the first item.
My leg was falling asleep.
Ah, well, you can come up here if you like.
Right. Is there a deck for this? We have 1 minute for JMAP access, and
Yep.
I think we're going to need an extra hour because we have a fascinating question to settle. JMAP access does not add any new grammar to IMAP. It does not add any new capability, or substantial capability, not name, to IMAP. So it kind of doesn't need a capability, but should it have one? This is a perfect question for the pedants and bike shedders among us. My opinion is it doesn't need one, let's ship it. I don't care though.
This is Ken. Yeah, so those that were paying attention, I kind of had an argument with myself on the mailing list as I was going to implement this. So
Best kind.
yes, so my reading after going through it a couple times is all we really have here is a new response code. It does not need a capability in my estimation. There was wording in there that led me to believe that there was one, but I think Aaron is determined he's going to remove that to remove the confusion. The only other question that I would have, and we can leave things as they lay, the only advantage I see with having a capability returned after authentication is if the client wanted to fetch it a second time, they can just do it with a capability command. With the response code, it's a one and done. If they miss it, it's no longer there. Small point, but and I am totally fine as leaving it with the response code as is.
Please, let's just ship it.
Well, yeah, you immediately look. Yeah, like, so the client's not going to like get asleep for a concept. Oh, I would say monkey grind.
I'm the monkey wrench. You also noticed that there's an IANA action missing.
Done, I believe.
When I thought there was a capability, there was a IANA registration missing. But if there's no capability, we're fine.
No, there is an IANA action. It adds a response code to the response code registry created by the fine RFC 5530.
But that's already in the doc. Like we're not.
Yeah, it's in the document.
Okay, great, thanks.
And IANA has done the action.
Okay, great. That's what I was missing. Is it's weird to add an IANA action in Auth 48, but we're not doing that. We're good.
Yeah, again, my arguing with myself is what led to Murray's confusion. We're good to go.
Unfortunately, he beat himself up pretty bad.
I appreciate you guys letting me go too.
That's it.
All right. It sounds like there's nothing to do here then, other than let it just keep progressing.
Marvelous.
You had some other stuff in these slides too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, that's later on the agenda.
Yeah, all right, we'll come back to it. IMAP in progress is next, and message limit and whatever else. Thank you. Message limit and UID only, and I think there aren't slides in progress. Marco, did you have something you wanted to say?
Nope.
No? Okay, you popped up on the screen for a second. Alexi.
So yeah, it was, I had excellent time. I thought I don't need any slides. And then I discovered a few reviews from Barry. So I thought, oh, I probably should have slides, which is fine. It's just like, by doing slides, I actually discovered I missed some of your comments. So that was good. Next slide, please. So yeah, minimal change in 7, just there was a missing capability registration for save limit. But there are slightly more substantial changes queued up. Next slide. So document in last call. Barry raised a few issues, which I would like to quickly talk about. So clarify that a copy behavior, that there is no partial failure. It's either all, you copy everything or nothing. I think the document says that, but it wasn't where you were looking for it. So I think it's editorial, but I can fix it. The append, you said it was underspecified. I mean, it is kind of true, but actually multi-append says that it's atomic as well. So it's all success or failure. So I added a sentence in my copy of next draft saying, again, no partial failure, either success or failure.
Yeah, this is Barry. Those two comments were both intended for somebody who's just reading this document. One sentence to clarify, that's all. So simple enough.
Okay, so now I will talk about the thing I didn't mention here, which I probably should have. Difference between UID expunge and expunge. The reason for this is basically, well, expunge shouldn't be used, and it always expunge everything. So the reason restricting it just makes it very awkward and unusable probably for most of the clients. UID expunge is mirroring how UID search and fetch work. So if somebody will search for a certain number of messages and hit the limit, you will get the error message. The same with UID expunge, basically,
So
to make it symmetrical.
What I brought up in the review is that it's odd. If I say expunge, it will expunge everything, which might be 20,000 messages. If I say UID expunge unlimited, that seems odd.
I think what I was trying to think, if there were cases where this is trying to present kind of a subset, well, chunked view of a mailbox, and if you can find a case where find all messages with certain property and then delete them, but maybe UID expunge is not a special case. So
I mean, I guess if you can specify, if you can show a case where it's useful to have a limit on UID expunge, that might answer my question, but I don't see one. It seems like you're trying to just do it for consistency, and I would rather see consistency with expunge rather than consistency with these other commands. So that's all. It's also a minor thing. If the working group doesn't want to change that, I'm done.
I don't think
just
we
raising the
thought
issue.
about. Okay. I was more certain before coming to the mic. Now I'm less certain, so let me just think about it. And I'll double check with my co-editors about, because, well, they're trying to limit, memory usage on the server and various other things. But in this case, actually, if you want to delete messages, this will minimize the disk usage, which is probably a good thing. So you might as well make it easy. So, okay, I'll double check. Ken?
This is Ken. I just wanted to get clarification on you briefly mentioned multi-append. Are we saying it's up to the client to know what the append limit is? And if they plan to use multi-append that would take them over, they need to expect that the entire append is going to fail?
Yeah, but it's the same if it fails for out of quota or something. It's the same.
Right, yeah.
It's similar. It's unfortunate. Well,
yeah, there's no way to accept the first 3 out of 10 and return that you took them.
Never was. It's optimization to reduce number of round trips in some cases, and it's used for migration mostly between cache to the server. But it's just a cost price.
Yeah, it's a lousy situation to be in if the client shoots over by 1 and they've appended 99 messages, which would have worked. We still have to fail the whole thing.
Yes, but at least the document will be clear about this now. So the last point is an interesting one. is the whole argument about what happens if you exceed the limit. I think the limit was put up as 1,000 to be a reasonable limit. So basically this affects for users that always keep all of their email in one mailbox or multiple mailbox. Basically big mailbox users, this is where this will affect people. If people keep smaller mailboxes or zero, inbox type thing, this will never be observed in real life.
Yeah, I'm not expecting that this will show up a lot. It's just that this is maybe one of the first extensions we've put in that is not compatible with clients that don't know about it.
Yep.
The server is foisting behavior on the client that used to work. And now we're putting in a standard extension that says it's not going to work anymore. And that the client that doesn't know about it, are screwed. And so I'm just a little concerned about it. It's not a major issue, but
to be honest, I don't know how to resolve this or just.
I don't either.
I would rather not advertise soft limit, because this, or having like hard limit and soft limit, that will make it slightly more complicated. We can do that, I suppose. Yeah, don't know.
Yeah, this is kind of, I agree with Barry. It is tough for existing deployed software. I guess moving forward, clients have become aware of message limit, can either limit the size of mailboxes the users are allowed to create on that server, or at least notify them that you're going to have a problem with mailbox X because it has 3 times the number of messages you can fetch or store against whatever.
I suppose.
This one raises what you raised before with the multi-append, really, because a client that understands message limit knows not to try to append more than the message limit, but a client that doesn't might try to append 1,000 messages, build up this enormous thing and send it to and because they did 1,002, the whole thing flops, and that's what I'm concerned about. So.
Absolutely agree, and we just ran into the same situation with a pen limit with a very largely well-known client that was exceeding that, and we were sending them by messages saying, because they were using non-sync literals, and we're like, you're out of here, and they just kept trying and trying and trying.
400 megabyte draft, just trying over and over again.
And on one hand, you can say it's not a well-written client in the first place. On the other hand, they're written to the original spec, so you cannot really blame them. So.
Well, this one, I guess it is, except the server's allowed to say no, and the spec actually specifically says you're in a bad situation. Here's what you can do.
Right.
Arndt, we have an older extension that limits IMAP. It's called login disabled. It's really very simple, and it is our record holder for the number of client bugs provoked divided by features in the extension. Kind of unhappy about login disabled because of that. And it makes me...
Well, yeah, retrofitting the old clients to support newer stuff is kind of hard, So
limiting didn't work very well for login disabled. Not sure what to say about it except it's bad karma.
Yeah, so maybe the answer to my comment is just to put some text in here that warns about the situation and says that servers can choose to tolerate clients that don't understand this or something like that, but in something non-normative that just says, this is a problem, be aware. Maybe that will suffice, I don't know.
You can still advertise a limit, but don't enforce it type instead. Yeah, I suppose. Okay. Can we maybe wordsmith some text with you and then we'll edit? Okay.
All right, I have put as an action, Barry and Alexei wordsmith some text.
Yeah. And I will come back on the UID expunge whether the limit should apply or not. I'll double check whether there is a case where it matters. If it doesn't matter, then just making no limit might be okay. Okay, all right, 2 actions. Next slide. UID only. Next slide, please. Right, so this is the changes in the last version, which is in last call now. There was a discussion about UID fetch item, and I think it's done to bronze satisfaction now, and somebody else raised the same issue. So, and then UID required response code was registered with AN. Next slide. So in last call, there were a couple of things that were noticed. Dave Cridland noticed that the example actually said UID required is returned in a tagged bad response, but example actually used okay. So I fixed in my copy, will be in the next revision. Then Barry asked in his art review about why is this should include UID required. Don't have a great answer to you. I think historically, a lot of response codes are kind of, if you include them, that would be great, but if not, world wouldn't fall apart. I think probably for debugging, it would be, I don't mind having a must here.
It was a minor comment, so I'm not wrapped around an axle either way.
I hold the other opinion, but I agree this is not a hill to die on.
What's the other opinion? Would you rather have must or?
I think that should is better than must, but really just go ahead with either, it's fine.
Okay.
Use your judgment.
I'm, after thinking a little bit about this, I think for debugging client bugs as well as for server operators to find out what the issue is, if the server returns just bad, they kind of, they might not. If the server returns bad UID required, they might be able to Google UID required, find I in the registry, find the document, and so it would be slightly easier to find. So,
Alexei, Arndt, did you know that if a server disregards a must, the protocol police will come and arrest the developers?
and so they should. Yeah, the other kind of argument in my head was how difficult is it really for server implementations to include response code? Is there some implementation that for which response code is anything other than a text string somewhere in the code or in a table? And I couldn't think of why it would be difficult for somebody to add a response code, to return a response code. So
This is Ken. As a server developer, at least on our server, it's trivial to add the code. Originally, was of the thought that if a client violates the must not use message numbers, it would know what the issue was. But having thought about it, just getting a bad back, you could get a bad back for a whole variety of other reasons. So I think including UID required would tell the client and anybody looking at the protocol, this is why it was rejected, not because they had bad syntax or something.
Fine. Okay. So again, I think we settle on a must then. So we'll change to must. So can we record an action item that Alexei to change should include UID required to must include UID required?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's it for this one.
Awesome. So given that, you will then publish the new document, and this is already, I believe, with IASG. So just no.
Finish last call.
This is waiting for Eddie. Okay, and then Murray will post it once it's done. Perfect. List metadata.
So if I do it this way, yep, it'll be last call, so these are waiting for.
Sweet.
next slide, just real quick. Yeah, that's another typo. This went through IETF last call. There was one substantive change. I had failed to list the IMAP metadata RFC in security sections because anything that applies there also applies to this draft. I think it's good to go. I'm going to make one more revision because last night I discovered RFC 8792, I think it is, which describes how to notate overly long lines that will not fit in within the line length limit of the text RFC. So the examples are line wrapped to fit within the line limit. So I'm going to go ahead and use 8792's guidance in notating those, but will have no other effect. I think
Cool.
that's it.
All right, and then Action Murray will push all these documents through once they're done. We've got a lot of stuff in progress here. Existing drafts, Civ, process, IMIP, and email snooze. Don't go anywhere, Ken.
I'll start with email snooze as the deck's coming up. I thought we had shelved that because there wasn't enough support for moving that forward just because there's too many disparate ways of snoozing.
Cool. Happy with that. When we get to the milestone review, we'll delete the milestone or mark it if there's some cancelled. Cool. Process IMIP, there should be slides for that, I believe.
Let's do that then. I was just going to let the existing draft expire.
Process calendar?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. All right. Next slide, please. I forget what I have here. Okay. Yeah. In Prague, we had discussed a couple additions that we wanted to make, one of which was a new organizer's argument, which can use the Civ extended list option. So if you want to specify a list of organizers that you're willing to accept invitations from, you can do that. I also added text to handle the case of multiple MIME parts with calendar data. Basically says that the implementation needs to make sure that those all are equivalent and only process one of them. So it's not doing the same thing more than once. Next slide, please. Yeah, also added text to security sections about attachments. As we discussed in Prague, basically says it should decode them if necessary and scan for malicious content. And based on some feedback, I clarified the meanings of these two outcome error strings. Next slide. And that is it. As of right now, I think it's ready for working group last call. So take that to the
Awesome.
hopefully.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
All right, Arndt, you wanted to speak about UTF-8 equals accept and IMAP 4 Rev 2. So this is Arndt's slides again, second half of them.
The second half is 7 times as long as the first half.
The second 90%. It's called... What was it called? Keep going up there.
This started when
Has it dropped
I
out of the
was
list?
Speaking to, I forget, either the Ruby or the Python client library maintainers. Must have been Ruby because the Python thing is slow. They want to, they have IMAP 4 revision 2 as a roadmap item.
Mm-hmm.
And have UTF-8 equals accept support. And the two are not quite compatible. And then the same thing happened working on Dovecot, which also presented compatibility problems. I've found two now. Alexei has found both of them, but I don't think Alexei realized they were problems. Yeah. I think Alexei wanted to include all of 6855 in IMAP 4 revision 2. And instead of just cutting and pasting, he typed it as the way it should be and fixed 2 bugs. Next slide, please. The first bug concerns append, which is the thing I talked about in Prague. 6855 says clients must send this UTF-8 bit and must use the parent. Parent is massively difficult to implement in Dovecot in combination with Catenate, but there it is. It's used by only one client at the moment, which uses it buggily. Alexei did it correctly. Looks a bit simpler. No, we didn't. We discussed it in Prague. No. You and I discussed it in private mail at least years ago. But let's go on to the second problem because that's new and more relevant. Next slide.
Well, we were just having discussion whether I would discuss this before, and I don't think that's a particularly useful thing to repeat at the mic. But yeah, I think the point of it's kind of if you just do append, inserting UTF-8, trying to analyze the data before you emit it, and then inserting UTF-8. If it's UTF-8, it's a bit of a difficult proposition, right? That's why just let the server figure it out. That was your argument.
That was my argument. Yes.
And it's also yeah.
It's difficult to fix the bugs in Python because neither the IMAP library nor the scripts tend to know that EAI is being used. And it's pretty much unused by the server, so there's not much value in fixing it. It's a complication for not much reason. The other difference that I discovered, next slide. Is a problem in the Dovecot implementation, which has an index to send some of the fetch items quickly. Most importantly, body structure, because body structure is incompatible. Dovecot will compute the body structure once, the first time a client needs it, and then send it from an index file to every client that asks for it. Makes sense?
Yeah.
I would guess that's what all of the servers do.
Many do, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Our implementation does as well. So
yeah, Cyrus does it on delivery.
Yeah. This is a problem for messages that comply with RFC 6833. In Alexei's implementation, 1951, message global is treated like message RFC 82. 6855 should have done that, I think. I think it's a simple omission, but it's not. And that means that if the first client that asks for body structure has enabled UTF-8 equals accept, then any for revision 2 clients will get an incorrect body structure, and the other way around. I found clients that actually break on parsing this body structure, so this is a problem.
Because it has UTF-8. So the issue is body structure will have UTF-8
No.
data in it, right?
No, the issue is that if the message is DSN, then the for revision 2 version has an extra blob with the envelope of the message to which the DSN pertains.
Yeah.
And in 6855, it will not have that data. In for revision 2, you get the envelope of the bounced message. In UTF-8 equals accept, you do not.
Okay. Well, I think 9051 is right.
So do I. Yep.
So this is Pete. So when we had this argument, it wasn't that much of an argument. When we had this discussion in Prague, I was worried, but I think you said something that relieves this worry. You're saying that servers don't have a problem with doing the look through the message and dealing with it. I mean, my concern is always that the client that doesn't support UTF-8 is going to be handed something with UTF-8. If you're saying are all of the server folks on board with the idea that we'll deal with that and we won't give clients the bad thing? If you append UTF-8 in the headers, we're not going to hand that to a client that's that doesn't do UTF-8 accept.
Well,
I don't care how they do it, but if I'm a client that doesn't say UTF-8 equals accept, if I don't start that, then whatever messages I get back better not have UTF-8 in the headers.
Pete, all of the servers that support UTF-8 equals accept also support a protocol that allows uploading messages without the UTF-8 marker.
Sure, the upload is not the problem. It's
no, the append. All of them support a method of appending that doesn't.
Right. No, I'm not worried about the append. I'm worried about the fetch. Yeah. If someone else has appended a UTF-8 message,
right,
and I come along as a client who doesn't support UTF-8, are you as a server either not going to show me that message or going to downgrade it for me?
Sorry, I expressed myself badly. All of the servers that allow clients to retrieve UTF-8 equals accept have at least one way to append a message where the client does not have to specify whether this message uses UTF-8.
That's still not
I think that's not what he's asking. So
yeah, no,
can I try to explain?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
This means that if the server doesn't care, if the server says, well, client has to deal with it, then that's the server's prerogative. It's bad and stupid, I think. That's what it does. But if the server wants to spare the client's feelings, then the server has to analyze this on its own. It cannot rely on the append bit because it also features a way to get message where that append bit doesn't exist.
I think we understand that. The question is you have client A appending using UTF-8 and then fetching using accept UTF-8. Yep. The client is fine because it supports UTF-8. And then there is client B, which doesn't support UTF-8 and fetch the same message.
Yeah.
Will it get UTF-8 or will it get a downgraded version in the fetch?
That question is not related to the actual appending. It's orthogonal.
But the question is, I have two clients.
Yeah.
The reason that we went to all this trouble was because it was claimed that servers are too stupid. And so clients need to make them aware that they are appending UTF-8 so that later, if some client comes along that doesn't understand UTF-8 and it does a fetch, the server will do the right thing. You're saying that all servers understand
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that all servers support more than one protocol.
Okay.
For example, it may support both IMAP and EWS.
Sure.
And EWS has an append command. It's not called append, but it is an append command. And that append command does not require the client to set any UTF-8 bits.
Right. So, okay. So now let's stop there. We assume that that's all true. Got it. I agree. Understood. Now, this server that is able to handle UTF-8.
Yep.
If a client that cannot handle UTF-8 comes along, one of two things has to happen. Either that server has to hide messages that have UTF-8 in them from this client so that it doesn't get them with UTF-8, or it's got to downgrade those messages in some way that the client can understand. We agree?
Agree entirely.
Do all servers take on that responsibility to either hide the messages or downgrade them? If they do, then we've got no problem. If they don't, if you're saying there are servers who are going to blindly give out UTF-8, even if the client can't handle it, then we still have a problem. It's not related to the append. I agree it's an orthogonal question, but the reason we put the UTF-8 marker in the append was to give servers a way to resolve that problem. If we're going to take away that marker, the server has got to take responsibility for that problem.
The server has got to take a responsibility for it anyway. The server can't escape that responsibility because it supports either Gmail API, JMAP, AWS, or Graph.
Right. This is Ken. Just to the append question. Clients are going to push us UTF-8 whether they put that marker in or not. So the server's got to deal with it. Oh, and to clarify one other thing you said, the IMAP servers aren't stupid. The implementers are stupid for trying to implement the server.
Fair enough. So if the answer is servers are going to take on the responsibility to resolve this for old clients, I got no problem.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah.
You got a problem. So servers will just do random shit. Servers will send 8-bit crap anywhere.
I'm aware of 5 servers that kind of do this. I know that 2 of them do it without regard to the UTF-8 marker. I know that one doesn't. It just sends shit. You ask for it, you got UTF-8. And for 2 of them, I haven't seen the source code. So I don't know how they actually do the resolution. I have reason to believe that they don't look at the UTF-8 bits, but I don't know it. So
to Pete's point, we had a similar issue with binary. One client pushes binary and another client. Yeah, so the server's got to do it.
Well, I suspect if we see the end of the slide, the answer will be you propose to revise the RFC, and RFC will just have to say, if you talk to clients that don't support UTF-8 accept, you have to downgrade. Well, which is probably, you have to downgrade, basically.
We have 2 RFCs that specify downgrading. I would say that's enough.
Okay. Well, yeah. If the current document doesn't say that, it has to say it somewhere.
Can add that as a third point that 6855 bis should say. The question here is, how do you feel about a 6855 bis that explicitly aims to be compatible with 9051?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because that's what I want. I want it to be simple to have support for both using the same code base in the client libraries.
Just to clarify, I absolutely agree. But if we're going to do 6855 bis that does that, it's going to have to also say, and you have picked up the responsibility to downgrade when you need to. It's got to say must, otherwise you're going to break clients.
Yep.
So as an interoperability issue, that's all that must means.
I'm
Okay. Yep.
completely amazed by how well EAI support
Yes.
can work with unextended clients. It's
Yeah.
in some ways it's a sequence of bugs lining up, and people manage to send mail through the aligned bugs. But
All right. I think we're out of time on this now.
So
excellent.
I
So we
think
adopt 6855 bis.
we've
and
got
everything's well.
we've got a request to adopt that. I think that's. Do you have a draft already that you'd like us to? Yep. All right.
6855 bis personal draft.
I'll do a call for adoption.
And I think there's a thank you slide at the end.
Cool. Yep. Cool. All right. Let's do that. All right. We had, I think, someone online who wanted to speak. So
In
Cool.
progress.
cool. All right.
Your charter doesn't let you modify that document. The charter doesn't let you modify 6855. It actually lists the ones you're allowed to play with, and that's not one of them. It lists you can change IMAP, you can change Civ, but this one is not in the list.
6855.
I'm happy to work with you to fix that. I'm just
Yeah,
pointing out
okay.
like
This is an IMAP extension, so
Yeah,
I would imagine it's within IMAP.
Doesn't IMAP include IMAP extensions? I think it does implicitly.
I'm fine. That's why I'm saying
Yeah.
We have a charter.
This says it extends RFC 3501. So I would have assumed that the charter said this and all its extensions. The introduction says extends 3501 in 6855. All right. Other business.
Somebody online wanted to, Vittorio was saying,
Yeah.
somebody wanted to talk about in progress. Somebody remote.
Yep. All right, go ahead.
Hi everybody.
Hey.
Seeing as the last time we discussed about IMAP in progress, there have been a couple of revisions, mostly minor items, some rewarding, a need in the examples, and a note reinforcing that invalid message should be disregarded in the security section. These were most of the things that were required. The only point that has remained uncovered is from Murray, when he asked why we have a should rather than a must for the progress needing to be increasing. And I replied to that in an email in mid of February in the extra group, and specifically to all the people that asked stuff to be addressed, but I'm not sure if it is enough or not. That's the status for this draft at the moment.
Sorry, what document are we talking about?
This is IMAP in progress, which was on here. We just missed because there weren't slides in it. We skipped over it. Sorry. So we're back on these. This is one of the documents that I believe is with you at the moment, Murray. Right. Cool. Do we need anything more on this point?
I can't hear from here.
Yeah, Murray, we'll need to get you to pop up to the microphone. Murray is looking through the chat history on it and we'll
okay.
answer that in a second.
Anyway, my point is that I didn't receive any negative or positive feedback to my reply, so I don't know if it is good or not.
So Murray just said he can't see anything holding it up. So that sounds like
Thank you.
Positive feedback. All right.
Yes, I see your message. I see my reply to it. There's nothing outstanding. It's ready for the ISG to deal with it.
Thank you so much. That's all for me.
Thanks, Marco. And sorry for missing you earlier.
No worries.
All right. We have the rechartering and we have milestones, and we're kind of out of time because this session finishes in 4 minutes. Did you want to speak briefly to the rechartering, Murray?
Sure. I guess we talked in Prague about the idea of recharting Extra into a working group just because this audience would move into the new work area. When Extra is done, we would start working on just becoming a general email maintenance working group. And we thought about either creating that working group separately or recharting this one into that. I'm leaning strongly into the former now and just make that one, let this one finish its work and wind it down. Even though there's overlap in the audience and the participation set. So there's not much to chat about now unless Extra thinks it needs to recharter to do other work. You'll see that the charter for the new thing is called MailMate. I'm not totally sold on the name yet, but the charter seems to be stabilizing. And the plan is to get it in front of the ISG starting early April. So the whole thing would charter by the end of April. And it would just be, you can read the charter. I'm not going to read it to you here, but MailMaint, M-A-I-N-T. I was going to call it, let's go through the names. I was going to call it Mailman, but there's a obvious, right? And then Pete had the idea of just calling it MM, which is awesome because we could take a hum on that and just confuse everybody, right? And there were other interesting names bandied about. So anyway. Mailware was one of the leading ones, but I couldn't quite come up with the long name that matched the short name. Anyway, you can expect the external review to that to start about mid-April, and then it should charter about the end of April. So nothing for this, no recharting unless you guys have some recharting you want to actually do for Extra.
I think continuing with just Extra and winding down once we've finished our existing documents seems fine. MailMate should be able to take on anything that Extra would have taken afterwards. I think it still makes sense to adopt Alexi's document, given that it's a continuing 3501 extension.
There's no hurry to wind this down. It's fine for them to be in parallel.
Yeah.
You all have enough energy to keep showing up at the meetings, so I'm not too worried.
Cool. Any other business before we very, very quickly look at the milestones?
Boring.
Not right now in the minute we've got left. No, I think big files can go to MailMaint when it comes up. And I think likewise, the auto discovery can go to MailMaint when it comes up. There'll be a bunch of stuff to go there. All right. Edit milestones. We have submit message limit draft, which is done. We have submit list metadata draft, which is done. Submit in progress, done. Submit IMAP UID only is done. Adopt a document for EAI with Civ. Did we wind up doing that? No, we have not adopted EAI Civ, or at least it's not here in our list of
I didn't see it in related.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't see it in related either.
All right. Yeah, I will. I'm going to pump that forwards to April and figure out what's going on with that. Civ calendar processing we decided not to do, so I guess I'll just delete that.
No.
What?
It's parked.
Oh, this one's just process IMAP. Yeah, sorry. That's done.
It
Is that?
hasn't been
No, it's not
submitted yet. I don't
submitted.
have it.
Yep.
Still open.
Okay, that one's not done. This one's still open. Going to be submitted. Was it what we were waiting on for process IMAP? Nothing. All right. So okay. Civ EAI, obviously we can't do because that hasn't been adopted yet, so bump that forward. Submit process IMAP draft.
Is that a duplicate?
Is that a duplicate? Yes. That's because we've got
Wait,
the
it's
wrong.
'cause this is the wrong document.
That's the wrong document. I think no.
The document is still called process IMAP, even if we change the name of the action process plan.
Yeah, so there's that, and then there's process IMAP. So these are duplicates, right?
Yes.
Let's just delete this one because it's a duplicate. Submit email snooze draft. We decided we're going to get rid of. Cool. And then there is adopt a document for RFC 6855 BIS, which will be next month. So, and that's it, I think. Done. Thank you, everybody. Right on 2 minutes late. See you at 6:45.
Well,
out at
I'll be
registration.
coming directly to the boundary. So at 7 there.
See you there at 7. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon. Have some beverages.
Um,